So, I don't know about you, but throughout this pandemic, I have consumed a lot of media. Whether it's Netflix, YouTube, or Instagram, there's still more to watch. So, I have compiled a list of 20 Netflix recommendations ready for you to binge. So let's get started. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. It is July and we are still in quarantine. I was planning on doing this video a few months ago, but then I decided to do my podcast video instead. But now, since we're all still stuck at our homes, I decided to do a Netflix recommendation video. I'm going to recommend about 20 TV shows that I absolutely love on Netflix. Some of these TV shows I watched a long time ago, some of them I just started watching, and most of these shows are bingeable, so get ready. So I'm going to go by categories. I'm first gonna do comedy, then drama, horror / sci-fi, then crime, and then food shows. So for comedy, no surprise there, The Office. So if you've been living on a ditch your entire life, The Office is basically just a show, kind of like a mock documentary style, where these characters are being filmed by a documentary crew showing their everyday lives in an office. Although that sounds boring, but it's a show that is very good at comedic timing. It displays the characters' storylines very well, and it's just an overall well put together show. The Office is two shows. There's the UK version and there's the US version. The US version is the most popular one, but the UK is also a really good one. I feel like a lot of people don't mention the UK one as much. The UK version is on Hulu. I feel like it was on Netflix a while ago, but I don't think it's there anymore. So if you have Hulu, you can watch the UK version as well. I'm not gonna lie, the American version takes a few episodes to get used to. I feel like you have to watch halfway through season 2 and then you'll be very invested, but it'll be worth it, I promise. Next is That 70s Show. This is another great comedic timing show. This is actually a 3-camera sitcom. This show is an oldie but a goodie. It just follows this group of friends throughout high school and college during the 70s. I feel like it's hard to talk about these shows without ruining them, but if you want to watch the show, I recommend watching from season 1 to like season 6 and then kind of just give up after season 6. I feel like after season 6 it's not very good. Some of the characters have been kicked off, some have been replaced, and it just didn't end very good in my opinion. But the first 6 seasons are just amazing and I love them. Threw a little shade there, but I wanted to be honest. Next is The Good Place. It's essentially this woman that dies and goes to heaven, and throughout the first episodes she discovers how this heaven works and makes new friends with people. And this is a different type of comedy show that I've never seen before, mostly because of the pacing of the story. If you keep watching the show, a lot of the storylines interloop, so I can appreciate some good writing right here. And that's all I have to say because I don't want to ruin the show. Next, Space Force. This show is actually very controversial. A lot of people didn't like it, but I feel like you have to have a certain type of sense of humor to like this show. If you like The Office, you'll probably like the show. It was created by the main character of The Office and the main writer of The Office and creator. So if you like The Office, it's most likely you'll like the show as well. It's essentially a man who works at the Space Force, and it's a comedic show just showing off his life and the problems he goes through. Next is Dead to Me. This show kind of creeped up on me. I feel like this show, when I first watched it, I didn't feel like it was gonna be a really good show, but it surprised me so much. As you keep watching the show, you get more and more invested, not in the characters, but I feel like more in the storyline. This show tends to do like really good cliffhangers. It's essentially a woman whose husband gets murdered and they try to figure out who it is. And even though this might sound like a drama show, it's actually a very funny show because all of the lines are delivered so well and the characters have really good personality traits, so it just makes the show really funny. Next is Sex Education. This show is a British-based show. It's essentially a boy who's in high school and goes through high school drama. It's basically just like any other show, but I feel like what makes the show really good is how they can make the show funny, but you can also be very invested into the characters. Most of these characters are very similar, but I feel like what makes it really good is that they react to the same situation in different ways. Now it's time to move on to comedy drama. Next is End of the Effing World. This is YouTube, guys. This show
is so good.
The cinematography is beautiful in the show. I feel like they take a lot of time showing the internal battle between the characters. Okay, my camera died. I feel like every time I film in this location, my camera dies. But what makes the show really funny are the clapbacks that the characters do. The way they talk to people, the way they talk to each other, because the main characters are two people, a girl and a boy. This is also a British-based show. It's about a girl and a boy who escape their homes to go out on adventures because they're tired of their lives. It just turns out to be some kind of crime murder spree. This show really gives me kind of like vintage vibes, even though the show isn't even that old. It's like 2 years old. It makes me feel like the show takes place in the 70s or 60s. Next comedy drama is I Am Not Okay With This. This show is kind of like a mixture of Stranger Things and The End of the Effing World because
The cinematography is like The End of the Effing World, and the sort of sci-fi that goes into it is kind of like Stranger Things.
Mostly because the creators of Stranger Things and The End of the Effing World are the ones that created the show. It's like a love child from both shows. It's insane. This show's about a girl who has anger issues and goes through high school drama, just like sex education. Because of her anger, she finds out she has powers and she's trying to control them, and it's just a really good show overall. Next is Atypical. This show does a really good job at displaying what life is like for a person with a mental disability. This show follows the life of a boy with autism. It's a show displaying how he solves his own problems by himself, starts to grow up, he goes to college and everything. But the show also makes it funny because of the characters and the way they try to help him with his life. Next category is like a horror sci-fi category. Before I start this category, another one that I wanted to mention is called Edge of the Universe. It basically explains the latest discoveries about asteroids and planets and comets. I know this is not technically sci-fi, but it's science, so I just put it in here because it's the only show that is outside of all the categories. But if you're definitely interested in these stuff like I am, definitely check it out. Next is H2O, Just Add Water. The show is super old and it's such near and dear to my heart because it reminds me of my childhood. I first watched the show in 2012 on Netflix when I was in 7th grade, and it's still there. I love to go back and binge the show whenever I want, mostly because the way they write the show is so funny to me. I don't know why. The show basically is about 3 girls who one day end up on an island and become mermaids, and they go back to where they live, which is really close to the island, and they essentially discover that they're mermaids and live their everyday lives that way, and the only way to turn into mermaids is to touch water. So next is Bates Motel. This show is so good, and it has one of my favorite actors, Freddie Highmore. He is so good. He's on one of my other favorite TV shows, The Good Doctor, which is on Hulu. This show basically is kind of like a spin-off show to the movie Psycho. The main character in Psycho, the 1950 horror film, is Norman Bates, and this show follows that character and how he combats his psychotic tendencies. Kills a lot of people, he does a lot of things. Starts off the show and he's in high school, and then he slowly grows up and becomes more vicious. I don't know how else to explain the show without like ruining it, so on to the next one. Next is Vampire Diaries. I feel like everybody knows about this show, but it's oldie but a goodie. This show is super long, so it's very bingeable. This show is really good at interconnecting storylines. Like, it brings back storylines from seasons before, and it gets you really attached to the characters because even though they add a lot of new side characters, most of the main characters stay intact, so you get really attached to them. It's kind of like these group of friends who start dating vampires. I don't even know how to explain it.
You have to go watch the show.
Next is American Horror Story. I feel like it wasn't a surprise that I mentioned this. This show is essentially a new horror story every single season, but every season the actors play different characters. It's essentially 6 or 7 actors that get incorporated into each season with a brand new story. This show is very good with cinematography. It's very good with its writing. So if you really like horror, I feel like you'll really like this one. And last but certainly not least, Stranger Things. I feel like this show goes for my favorite shows of all time. Does that make me like 12 or 13 years old? Maybe, but
I don't care.
my favorite thing from the show is the writing. They have ways of planting seeds in the beginning of the seasons and eventually lead to answers, and then somehow ends with satisfaction. It takes place in the 1980s. It's about a group of friends who discover very mysterious things in their town, and that's all I can say without ruining it. Hi. Okay, so halfway through editing this video, I realized that I didn't do the crime portion of this video. I literally completely forgot about it. I had it written down and I didn't mention it at all. So, a crime show I really like is Criminal Minds. It's a group of people from the FBI who use behavior to catch bad guys and murderers. Every single episode they go through a different case, and it's really cool because sometimes the cases interlap with their personal lives, and it's just a really good show. Crime shows tend to last like super duper long, so there's like 12 seasons on Netflix. This is an example of really, really good writing because they have to sit down and create a story every single episode. Next is Unsolved Mysteries. This is a new series on Netflix. Netflix. It's a Netflix original. I'm not gonna lie, it's really scary. Things that terribly scare me are like true crime and stuff. They're super duper interesting, but sometimes I just can't watch it because it's too much for my soul, especially when they're real cases and real people. That's the difference with Criminal Minds, because they're fake stories, fake characters, fake stories. But with Unsolved Mysteries, these are like real things that happened, and it just freaks me out even more. So every single episode they go through unsolved mysteries / murders that happened back then that haven't been solved. They essentially talk through every portion of the case, and they just explain what happened, why it hasn't been solved yet, all the angles that the police have, and it's just really interesting to learn about different cases. They have 6 episodes, I believe, in the first season. They haven't done a second season yet, but I'm pretty sure they will. But if you guys really like true crime and find it as interesting as I do, go ahead and check this out as well. This next show is called How to Get Away with Murder. This show essentially follows a group of law students that help out their law professor on different cases. So some of these cases are the professor's work to give practice to the law students. What makes the show really interesting is that they all get involved in a murder and they have to try to cover it up with the help of the professor and everything they learned in law school. So it's just a really interesting show. All right, back to Past Me. Next is the food show category. First one is the Great British Baking Show. This show is the type of show to put when you're cleaning your room or doing busy work, because this show is just overall very entertaining. I feel like it's really self-explanatory. It's essentially a baking competition, and everything that they end up doing makes me so hungry. Next is Sugar Rush. I feel like this show is a very similar version to the Great British Baking Show, but it's kind of like the American version. Every single episode they have a new theme for the contestants to do. Is it just me, or does it make you really sad when the person you want to win doesn't win? In these like baking shows, it just makes me so sad. Anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. These are one of my absolute favorite shows on Netflix right now, so go ahead and watch it if you have time, and let me know if you guys like it. Please leave in the comments down below any other recommendations that you guys have, because I have already watched these shows, so I'm looking for something new to binge. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like this video because that's how you let me know. Subscribe for more videos like these, and hit the bell notification so you get notified every single time I post. I post every single Sunday, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.